My family runs a tomato farm. Though it is a small farm run by my dad and mom, grew popular, quality tomatoes. They have been dealing with the famous Italian chain, Thompson Foods, for over 10 years, even the CEO personally asked me. Since childhood, my dream was to take over from my dad. As soon as I graduated from a local agricultural school, I joined the family business. But then, my dad started having health issues and to be in and out of the hospital. There was so much more I wanted to learn from him and prayed for his recovery every day. But when I turned 22, he passed away. It was heartbreaking, made me upset. But I had a mission to protect my dad's tomatoes. Every day, my mom and I worked tirelessly on our farm. Sometimes, my childhood friend, Emily, would come to help. Emily's family runs a large organic farm around here. If you have time to help us, don't you have your own work to do?
No worries. We have a lot of staff. Plus, I love your tomatoes, James.
Her tan face, big round eyes, and her dimpled smile was so bright. Hearing her say that, my heart raced.
You should just tell your feeling to her already. It's annoying just watching.
My mom muttered so only I could hear. I felt that I blushed to the ears, so I pretended not to hear and walked away. My unrequited love for 15 years still bore no fruit. It was more difficult than tomato farming. 3 years had passed since my dad's death, and I had turned 25. Fortunately, our tomato business was thriving, partly thanks to the recent tomato craze, and sales were on the rise. The trick to stress the tomatoes to the limit to bring out their sweetness was tough, but my mom hammered the nuances into me. One day, our top client, Thompson Foods, contacted us saying they were sending over a new representative to introduce themselves. They're a loyal customer who buys 40% of our tomatoes. Their previous rep was Mr. Wood, a veteran who had helped us since my dad's generation, but he was retiring and a younger guy was replacing him. I wanted to build a good relationship with the new rep, so I was geared up from the morning of their visit.
Nice to meet you, I'm Jackson. I'll be taking over from here. Look forward to working with you.
The young-looking guy, Mr. Jackson, arrived in a flashy sports car. He was dressed in a stylish suit and shiny leather shoes. I was taken aback because Mr. Wood was a more modest man. I'm James. Look forward to working with you two. I extended my right hand to him respectfully, but he just snorted, as long as I'm in charge, I'll judge strictly by results. Don't lump me in with unimpressive old guys like Wood, who've been stuck in the same position for years. I'm an elite, chosen from within Thompson. His words were so abrupt and made me take aback. With no attempt to hide his condescending attitude, he took a quick look at me, then ostentatiously covered his nose with his towel.
For now, show me your greenhouse.
He looked at me as though I was something dirty, then started to walk. Inside, I was thinking, what the hell is he? But I managed to guide him around with a smile. However, even while he was inspecting the tomatoes in the greenhouse, his rude attitude didn't change. I picked a ripe tomato and handed it to him, asking, "How is it?" But he said, "Well, it's just ordinary, right? Nothing different from the others." He complained about everything, and after looking around the greenhouse for about an hour, he said, "Well, I'll be back. I think your tomatoes, to be frank, are expensive. Oh, I mean, considering their quality. We're a major company, so we don't mind paying, but your tomatoes are expensive and they don't have any special features." As he brushed the dirt off his shoes with a disgusted expression, he told me,
"We're going to reconsider the purchase price. I'll contact you later."
With that, he quickly got in his car. Wait a minute. The purchase price is at its absolute minimum. We have a long-standing relationship with your company, so we always deliver the highest quality one. I grabbed the closing door and shouted,
"The highest at this level. That's why the subcontractor in the countryside is troublesome. You should study more. There are plenty of tomatoes of this quality to be found."
He spat out his words, slammed the door, and gone. What the hell was that? I shouted in frustration, but all that remained was the smell of gasoline. From that day on, his unreasonable demands continued. He said things like lower the purchase price by 30%, and even if it's lowered, we should still deliver better quality tomatoes. It was utter nonsense. This is just bullying farmers, isn't it? Why would they let such a jerk handle the on-site operations? I found myself venting to my mom over beers at dinner.
He's apparently a relative of the chief of Thompson, you know. He's an elite graduate from MIT, and everyone says it's a sure bet that he'll be an executive in the future.
My mom sighed too. What does the company's internal affairs have to do with the farmers like us? Angered, I finished off the beer in my glass. Didn't the CEO of Thompson used to be close with Dad, right? Didn't he come to buy our tomatoes directly? I asked my mom as I reminisced about the past. I think I met the CEO once when I was in elementary school.
Oh yes, Thompson was a small company back then. And the CEO was deeply impressed by Dad's tomatoes and visited us many times.
Is there no way to complain directly to the CEO about him? My mom shook her head with a smile.
He's become a big shot who even appears on TV now. There's no way he remembers people like us from a small farm.
As she said this, I nodded in agreement. But if things continued like this, our wholesale prices would be driven down. Yet, we can't afford to stop our dealings. Thompson Foods is a client we can't afford to lose. Mr. Jackson will come to discuss contract renewal tomorrow. What should I do? My words were met with a troubled expression from my mom. As expected, when he came the next day, he firmly insisted on a reduction in the purchase price.
That's what I'm saying. Tomatoes at your level are a dime a dozen, don't you understand? We're doing business out of charity. You should be more aware of your status.
His irritated voice echoed throughout the greenhouse. My mom and Emily, who were harvesting, looked over at us with worry.
The one who would be troubled if our dealings stop is you, right? A tiny farm like yours should be grateful just to be able to trade with a big corporation like Thompson. So, from the next season, we'll need this price.
Saying this, he slammed a new contract in front of me. Being called tiny got to me. I don't think our tomatoes are common goods. At the price listed here, we can't supply our tomatoes. What? He is glaring at me? He grabbed a tomato from a nearby branch. This is all you're worth, and yet you have the audacity to talk back to me, a city elite like me, challenged by a country bumpkin. Without hesitation, he threw the tomato to the ground. The red fruit squished and splattered.
What the hell are you doing, idiot?
The one who yelled out was Emily. As she ran towards us, she carefully picked up the fallen tomato.
Do you have any idea how much sweat and time we pour into growing just one of these? How on earth can you supervise farmers without understanding even this? It's you who needs to hit the books again.
Her eyes widened in anger as she glared at him.
What the hell is this girl?
He had been eyeing Emily up and down, suddenly realized, oh, I thought your face looked familiar. You're the girl from that organic farm, ain't you? So what? Emily shot back.
You sure do have a sharp tongue. You know your family does business with us, right? How about I consider cutting it off?
He stepped up to Emily with smirking and pleasantly. Emily's complexion changed. It's no surprise. Emily's family sells half of their vegetables to Thompson. If their trade were to stop, it would be a massive blow. He laughed loudly upon seeing the frustrated look on Emily's face.
Every single one of you, all these countryside subcontractors, no manners at all. Well, I'm kind-hearted. I might consider forgiving you if you apologize and say sorry.
Emily's face was flush-red with anger. He insisted, come on, apologize already. He stepped up to Emily once again. She's not involved in this. Please, for my sake, let it go. After saying that, I apologized him and said that I'm sorry.
James.
I could hear Emily's desperate voice, but I kept apologizing to him.
Well, as long as you understand. Just make sure to sign these papers. I'll be back to collect them next week.
I could hear his footsteps as he left the greenhouse. and I stood up. When she looked at me with a tearful face, she could only say, "I'm sorry." Before running away, my mom gave a gentle pat on my shoulder as I stood there blankly.
You did well.
Those words left me no option but to laugh. I was racking my brain over it all week, and I decided not to renew my contract with Thompson. I realized I couldn't deal with Mr. Jackson any longer. We may be just a small farm, but I do have my pride. Above all, I couldn't tolerate how he treated Emily. On the day of the contract renewal, as I was waiting for him to arrive, Emily brought an unfamiliar man.
This is our representative, Mr. Daniel.
After she introduced us, I greeted him with a "nice to meet you." He looks like the same age as me. Unlike Mr. Jackson, he was a friendly-looking man with a calm smile.
This is not our first time meeting, don't you remember?
With a smile, Mr. Daniel asked, and I stared at his face. Have we met somewhere before? Just as I asked, we heard the loud engine sound, and Mr. Jackson's car pulled up.
Daniel, what are you doing here?
Mr. Jackson came out from the car, acting superior even towards Mr. Daniel.
I've invited someone here today. I thought you should meet him too.
Someone.
Yes, oh, it seems he's arrived.
Just as Mr. Daniel said so, a luxurious black car pulled up and stopped right in front of us. The one who came out was the CEO of Thompson, whom I had seen several times on TV.
The CEO?
The first to shout in surprise was Mr. Jackson. The CEO glanced at Mr. Jackson and then stopped in front of me without saying anything.
It's been a long time, hasn't it, James? 15 years, I guess. I'm deeply sorry I couldn't make it to your father's funeral.
He said so and apologized. I had no idea what was going on.
I've heard the entire story. It's embarrassing that such an employee is in our company. It's all my fault. Please forgive me.
As he continued to apologize, I was even more panicked. However, Mr. Jackson was even more panicked than me. He is standing still, his face pale as a ghost.
Jackson.
His loud voice made Mr. Jackson jump like a startled grasshopper.
So, you've been making fun of our valued farmers here and there?
No, not at all. I've not made fun of anyone.
He frantically made excuses, and Emily shouted, "You have." Who made James apologize in front of us. His face turned even paler as he looked at Emily.
I'm ashamed that I didn't know. It seems that everyone was turning a blind eye to what you were doing because you're the chief's relative. This is a collective responsibility of the chief as well.
At his words, Mr. Jackson's face turned ghost white. This is exactly what you call blood draining from the face.
I was just trying to benefit the company.
Silence,
said with a stern voice. Mr. Jackson went silent. He looked like he was about to cry.
Our job exists because of our farmers. You didn't even understand that while you were working. I'll tell about the punishment later. Get lost.
As Mr. Jackson slouched into his car, Emily shouted, "Apologize to James. Apologize to him in the same way you made him do." Mr. Jackson turned his white face towards me like a puppet and scowled with frustration. "It's okay, Emily."
But
I don't want to stoop to his level. As I said so, Emily nodded. Mr. Jackson then got into his car and drove away. I turned to the CEO and asked, "Thank you, but why?" I was curious as to how he knew about this matter.
I heard it from Daniel here. It seems Emily consulted him.
As he pointed out, I looked at Mr. Daniel. "You?" At that, he smiled and said, somewhat shyly, "It's a secret within the company, but I'm his son." Both Emily and I were surprised and looked at him and the CEO.
He asked if he could borrow my authority as a parent. I was surprised. My son, who had always said he didn't want to be treated specially because he was the CEO's son. What kind of turn of events was this? When I asked him, he told me about this matter.
Upon hearing this, Emily asked Mr. Daniel, "So that's why you said you would handle it yourself, right?" He nodded and said, "James, you might not remember, but when I was in elementary school, I came here with my dad once. We had a lengthy conversation at that time. He said so, I exclaimed, Bo. It was in the 6th grade. There was a time I had taken out a bird-looking kid who was stuck in a conversation between 2 adults. You're the kid from that time. He confirmed my words with a nod.
Back then, you, even at 12 years old, confidently declared your dream to produce tomatoes even better and tastier than your father's. I was moved hearing that. I thought it was amazing for a child to have such a clear vision of what he wants to do in the future.
Recalling that conversation, I remembered what else was said. That time, he had told me, I will come to buy those tomatoes.
I'm afraid I'm still not capable of purchasing your tomatoes with my own earnings, but I will fulfill this promise one day. Would you wait for me until then?
Saying that, he extended his right hand to me. I nodded and firmly grasped his hand.
In the meantime, make sure you propose to Emily, okay? She's been waiting for you.
He whispered me and smiled. At that moment, I felt my face turn red like a tomato.
What's wrong, James? Your face looks like a tomato.
Hearing Emily's puzzled voice made me blush even more. The chuckles of the president and Mr. Daniel only added to my embarrassment. Afterward, the contract was renewed under new conditions, and it seems like my first love is finally about to bear fruit.